Welcome to the Tufts University December Teaching Symposium. This is our first December symposium back since the pandemic. So we hope to see more of these in the future. It's a chance for us to gather as a university and talk about a topic of interest. And this year's topic has been quite a bit of a buzz this year, so it felt very timely for a December symposium. My name is Carrie Cardamone, and I'm here from the Center for the Enhancement of Learning and Teaching. Today's event arises from a long-running learning community that the staff have been having. So this is staff across the university, across all of the schools within our university, who've been gathering since early spring 2022, actually, before ChatGPT had their big public push. All right, so this learning community has been meeting. And we've been gathering. It brings together people from the libraries, people from educational technology services across TTS, as well as CELT, the School of Medical Education, dental collaborators.
I ask if there's someone from IT here who can help me. I went to the website, that my computer was the one that froze. Is there anyone outside? Yeah. Thank you so much.
We do have a lot of ed tech folks today in the room. And they have really been collaborating on the whole series we've run this fall, all the events that have been going on. One of the big privileges about working at Tufts is that there's a lot of really passionate, really talented people who are also very generous. And so that's what arose today's event. And then we have a series of things we've been doing this year, just this fall. We've had a bunch of workshops, roundtables. Mona Sloan was invited by Tufts Students Life to come in and talk about specifically the student experience, and she gave a great framing of AI as an infrastructure and the critical nature of bringing together faculty, staff, student voices into the process of decisions around AI and how we're going to use it as a university, what systems we're going to adopt and how. And I think that is what this fall list of events shows that we've been doing all fall. Lots of faculty meetings, departments, conversations one-on-one, a whole host of online resources, including guidelines for the use of generative AI from TTS. And students and faculty have been experimenting with AI and reflecting on the uses of AI in courses across the curriculum. And so that's where some of the student posters come from. Who's here today? Well, I only know who registered because I can't do it on the fly of who signed up, but we have a pretty broad representation of staff and faculty across all of the schools at Tufts. We had 76 people sign up to come in person and 56 people sign up to come in Zoom. And that's a wordle of the departments y'all are coming from. We had a back channel betting going on at CELT as to how many people who said they were coming in person would show up in person. So we'll see who wins. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jem to say a few words about AI at Tufts.
Good morning, everyone. As Carrie mentioned, my name is Chidam Talgar. I'm the Vice Provost of Education here at Tufts. And I'm really excited to talk a little bit about how we're so blessed to have every single one of you here at Tufts really experimenting with what, in my mind, is such an incredible opportunity for us to think about the future of learning at the university, at Tufts, but then also the future of learning much more broadly. As you know, ChatGPT was released last year. When it was first released, there was this kind of like big gasp heard over the interwebs about how this is new, and we know that that's not the case. In fact, if we look at it, just in the recent future, OpenAI, which is the company that released ChatGPT, had already released DALL-E, which was around using AI for visual images. They had released Jukebox around music, and they had also been, I think this was one of their first releases, which was a robot hand being able to solve a Rubik's Cube, which I still can't do. Not have a robot hand to solve a Rubik's Cube. I just had to buy one for my niece. So. But even we can go even further. I mean, this goes back over 60 years. Of lots of work that's happening. But what's very interesting is that you'll also see between 1999 and 1966, you'll see that this has been an exponential trend. But even more interesting, and I'd like to say that I'm also younger than this, I'm younger than 60 as well. But also what you'll notice is that in the last year, the rate at which this has increased has been mind-blowing. And this is just the tip of the spear. And this is just going to grow so incredibly fast. And so what we're doing here today is continuing a conversation which Carrie mentioned earlier around how we're taking this on, how our students are taking this on, how our staff, how our faculty are taking this on in very, very exciting ways in really thinking about it. And I always ask folks who are thinking about the current moment, what is 2 years going to look like? What is 5 years going to look like? And how can we think about what we're doing within that timescape rather than working for the today and for the here and now? This is more of a single image that shows how divergent the thinking around artificial intelligence and large language models has become over the last 3 years. And it's disrupting society, it's disrupting industry in ways that are incredibly exciting and concerning at the same time. And one of the things that's really important for education and what our role is as institutions of education and as faculty who are impacting our students is that not only are we preparing our students to design their lives in meaningful ways in a society that is where AI is ubiquitous, our own institutions and the work that we do are directly being impacted as well. So it's kind of like a double whammy when it comes to the opportunities that are present. In my role at the university, really thinking about the entire learning ecosystem, what I'm trying to do is to get leadership and to really orient the university to the whole student life cycle and the entire student lifelong learning journey. So assuming and hoping that our work with our students does not end at graduation, but that it's something that continues. And I can imagine that a lot of you stay in contact with your students. And so this goes all the way from application to college to really thinking about the learner journey, not just in the classroom, but beyond the classroom, and thinking about how we support our students through educational opportunities, personalized learning, and the like, all the way to post-graduation and lifelong learning and thinking about how we help them design their lives to be iterative and agile and the like. And so it's really important for us to really think at three different areas. One around the rapidly changing learning environment, the increased human-robot interactions, and then lastly, the increased speed and abundance of information. And one of the things that's really exciting is that each of these offer opportunities for us. From our learning environments evolving, this is an opportunity to build more effective and impactful learning environments. There is concerns about ethical use, but is it an opportunity to teach about ethical use of data? And lastly, our curiosity around the role of higher education as a whole. We've had lots of conversations about increased human-robot interactions and what an integration of AI into the university experience as a whole might look like. And then lastly, really thinking about how we support our students in information literacy and in being able to build the key skills that they need to be able to navigate this world. Of course, one of the biggest challenges and something that constantly comes up more by some people than others is the fact that this is just like any other system. It is a system that has biases in it. And more recently, it's a system that has a tendency to what some people call hallucinate or fib. And so it's something, again, is an opportunity for us. And I've heard from a lot of you in terms of how we can address it as an opportunity to teach our learners meaningfully. So from my perspective, in terms of the next steps at Tufts, I think that there's three areas of focus. One is in evolving our teaching practice using AI based on the learning sciences, because what AI allows us to do is to bring us closer to what the research shows is impactful learning approaches and impactful learning pedagogies. And what I'm hearing from a lot of you is that is the opportunity that you're trying to grasp, and that's really exciting. We also know that it's an opportunity for us to think about what the world is that we are trying to prepare our students for. What are the outcomes? How are they different? What are the new skills or the augmented skills that we want to prepare our learners for? And then lastly, how do we advance the institution to impact across different learning environments? So just in terms of how we're looking at this, it's a spectrum. One spectrum is how we facilitate adoption and integration, and how we address concern over the adoption as one spectrum of how our educators are looking at this. And then at the university, we're looking at how that looks like at the individual level, the individual practitioner. That might be a faculty member, a student, staff member. Our alum are incredibly curious, and I've heard about some interest in reaching our alum around these topics. And then building out an experience as a function of that. So at the individual level, creating spaces, one of the things that my office in the Office of the Vice Provost of Education we're trying to do is to create space for innovation, and to create a network of innovation, which includes all of you. But then also to build competencies and frameworks around what we mean by pushing our institution, building innovative programs, like we're looking at an AI plus program so that we can help students really use the context of learning that you offer in your classes, but then introduce topics like AI into them, and then building a data infrastructure. And then for those that are on perhaps on the other end of the spectrum and they're really concerned over adoption, it's really about coming alongside them. And that's not us, that's you. You have your own networks, your excitement and your dedication to this work is incredibly important as we think about how we build a culture of vulnerability, a culture of openness to really trying and experimenting this and bringing us closer to our students so that we reduce the power dynamics in the classroom as a result of this. It's community-based learning, thinking about academic integrity. Where do we want to stop with its adoption? Conversations around programmatic outcomes. And then lastly, what does data governance look like? How do we want to use and advance data across the institution?
Dr. Cynthia Alby is the professor of teacher education and our faculty director at Georgia College Journeys in Georgia College, Georgia's public liberal arts university, which we actually found out is a similar size to Tufts last night at dinner. She has a dual appointment as well as a lead instructor for the Governor's Teaching Fellows Program at the Lewis McBee Institute for Higher Education, and she gets to work with faculty across the state of Georgia.
I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how I came to study AI. Back in December 2022, when this was all kind of getting started, I knew I was going to have some fairly major surgery, and I had set aside several weeks to, recover from it. And I had the surgery, and the next day I felt fine. And then the doctor was like, "Yeah, just live your normal life." So I had all this time on my hands all of a sudden, and a friend of mine said, "Have you taken a look at this Chat GPT thing?" And I thought I would have a look. And the very first thing I put in, no idea why, I asked it to write me a grant for innovative classroom furniture. And then it just poured out in front of me. And it was remarkable because it had the parts of a grant that, there's certain things a grant has. It had those parts, even down to things like the amount of money it was requesting was, I felt, quite accurate. And literally that's all I had put in. It wasn't even a particularly interesting prompt or magnificent prompt. And I'm telling you, when that sucker poured forth, I felt the strangest combination of horrified and giddy. And my heart seriously was pounding. Like I could feel it in my chest pounding. And I think you can understand why I was horrified. That part's probably pretty easy to understand. But the reason I also felt giddy was that I thought, oh, this could really lead us to a reimagining of education. I think we all hoped that would happen with the pandemic, and yet I feel like we just kind of went back to status quo. But with AI, I think we might not have a choice. I think it might push us to have to do this, and I'm glad for it. have a link to this PowerPoint later because it's got a lot of active links and things for you all to look at. And so one of the things I might recommend is I wrote an article probably, I think maybe in January last year, called The Nail in the Coffin, because that was kind of my hope that this finally was going to be the nail in the coffin. And so, you know, I've found as I've talked to different people, you know, sometimes I'll get a warning when I'm going to talk to a group. By the way, I think this is my 50th across the nation, my 50th presentation on this. And they'll always tell me, well, there's going to, you know, the younger folks are pretty into it, but, you know, some of the older ones, you know, they're not, they're kind of against it. And I'm just not sure that's true. I'm not that young myself. And I've run into loads of people who are my age and older who are actually very excited about this. So, and may I also say that you all might not have a strong sense of kind of where you stand as an institution in terms of what you're doing with AI. But I do have a feel for it because I've been to so many institutions, and you all are way up there. I'm telling you, just the amount of faculty development around this, the number of people who are just actively diving in. Yeah, so yeah, round of applause for you all. Pretty exciting about that. And I just like to say that I'm not particularly techie. My focus has been on joy, meaning, and enchantment. And I do fully recognize that AI is probably going to usher in a whole new era of criminality and disinformation. Yeah. Oh, the next election, just gonna really be bad. It could be disastrous. I mean, the people who have developed it have said flat out it could be disastrous. I know all that, but I feel like we must understand it, and our students must understand it, and it is quite useful. So my thought was, I'm going to use it. I'm going to get my students using it, and we're going to see what happens. So here's my agenda for the day. I'm going to be quiet for a moment, let you have a look at that. So just a little bit of background. So AI is kind of the larger umbrella. And within AI, you've got a subcategory that would be called GPT, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. But the key word there that you really just need to know is generative. It's a generative AI. And then a subcategory of that is the large language models. And those are generative pre-trained transformers that were trained on language. They are not good at everything, that is for darn sure. A few things that they're terrible at. They're not great at journal-based research because they were trained on what was available, and most journal articles are behind paywalls. So if you're like a master's or doctoral student and you're writing a literature review, it is not going to be good for that. But more and more, you're going to see specialized AIs. They're sometimes called walled gardens. And this is when you could feed an AI, you could feed it all the great journal articles in a particular field, and then it could draw from those. So for example, a colleague of mine at Georgia College is creating a specialized GPT where he's feeding it grant applications that were extremely well written and successful. So then he can query it when he's working on grants or other people are working on grants. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about, and that might be something you all and your students might want to look into doing, is creating some kind of specialized AI for purposes like that. It's not very good at simple math. It's not designed for internet searching. Use a search engine. It's not really good at that. It is really good at making cool visuals though. Yeah, this one I made from using Midjourney. So I like to try to give people a sense of what it could do. And one of my favorite examples is from Ethan Mollick. He is who I follow most religiously in terms of keeping up with AI. He's from the Wharton School, and he writes one blog a week, and it's always excellent. So he, years ago, had created this cool education game for business students, and he needed to market it. So he said to himself, well, what if I gave myself 30 minutes and just see how far I could get in marketing this game? And AI would do all the work. He had just prompted it. And after 30 minutes, here's what he had. Quote, I created a market positioning document, an email campaign, a website, a logo, a hero image, a script and animated video, social campaigns for 5 platforms, and some other odds and ends beside in 30 minutes. Yeah. And if you'd like to go, he posts, you know, if you want to see the video and see, yeah. And he's done quite a few other experiments in this same kind of vein where he sees how much he can do in 30 minutes or an hour, and it's just crazy. So I already told you about how on the horizon we have more specialized GPTs that are trained on quality subsets. You're also going to see more and more AI linked to other apps. So for example, already there's a good bit of experimentation in terms of like saying to AI, you know, I want to go on vacation on these dates to this place. And not only will it, you know, look up the best prices, but it will, you know, make the reservations for you and like do all the stuff. Like you could just put in what you want and it takes care of all, it uses a variety of apps that are linked to do all the stuff. Makes me a little nervous, but, and you'll see more and more AI is going to be incorporated into everything. Already, it's part of Khan Academy. Duolingo has kind of totally redone what they've been doing using AI. You've probably seen it in Canva. Maybe you've seen it in the Google Suite. And definitely on the horizon, we're probably looking at better and better quality. The difference between GPT 3.5 that came out last December and GPT-4 that came out a few months later, many say it's about tenfold. And the people who are paying a close attention to that whole thing with Sam Altman, and yeah, say that from what happened there, they had the sense that there's something big on the horizon, another really big leap. So what does this mean for our students' futures and careers? Well, we know from past similar types of events that technological advances tend to, there tends to be a lot of job lost in the short run and a lot of job gain in the long run. And that the jobs that are gained are usually better ones, so to speak, higher paying, more interesting types of jobs that require higher level thinking skills and education. Here are specifically some of the jobs that are considered kind of most at risk. The one I'm kind of excited about is customer service. I'd kind of almost rather talk to a really great bot who will never get mad, even if I do. And I thought this was really interesting. This is from the World Economic Forum, and businesses were asked what their top 10 skill priorities were for 2027. So they were asked to look into the future, you know, what will you be looking for? And AI and big data, number 3. But just generally, I thought this was a really interesting list. And when I've shown this to students, they've been very interested in it. So this might be a slide you want to show to your students. So how would you introduce students to AI? Well, I've got this protocol. If you'd like to follow it, you can just come to this slide and click on it, and it'll kind of lead you through. But basically, when I've been introducing students to AI, I start with the downsides. There's this fabulous article where the author just lays the lumber. I mean, just tears AI a new one, just lists all the things that are awful about it. Very well done. And I think it helps to see that. And then I move into having students start to use it and critique the output. And then I step back. This whole sequence takes about 50 minutes, 45, 50 minutes. I step back and I ask them to have a discussion that I'm just listening in on. And the question I pose to them is, why would you want to use AI responsibly as opposed to irresponsibly? And they start to persuade one another. And that's interesting. So anyway, if you'd like to use my protocol, you can just click there and everything will be provided. Basically, what I've been telling students just everywhere I go is when it's used judiciously and at just the right time, it can take your learning to the next level. But the trick is sometimes using it less and less over time. Like, for example, if you're using it to learn to write well, you might use it a lot up front and then less and less as you learn more. And that the trick is not to let it ruin your learning. So I'm going to tell you a bit about my own experience using it in the classroom, my experience using it online. Those are very different experiences. I'm going to talk a little bit about what some are calling the ubiquitous temptation and detection. But here's the most important thing, and you're going to see I keep coming back to this because I really want to drive this home. When students, and in fact any humans, can see how what they are learning has value and feel they are capable of succeeding in what we have asked of them and aren't in a position of desperation, they will almost always put in the work. Is that not true of you? I mean, when you see something has value, and you really want to learn it, why would you mess up that learning? But when you don't see it as valuable, and probably you are asked to do some things, I know it's hard to believe that in academia, sometimes we would be asked to do things that we don't think has value. That's when people turn to using AI unethically. And so that this idea of value is so key, so key. And that's how this relates to the rest of my life's work. We called the book Learning That Matters. And it's all about course design that helps students see why learning matters and how to value the learning. So I'm hoping this message really, really sinks in by the end. So how can we use it well? How do I use a large language model? Well, to use it, you need to know kind of two things. One, which to use, and another, how to prompt it. So here are kind of your main choices. The original was ChatGPT 3.5. It's free. Please don't use it. Don't use it. Just don't, because it's outdated, it's biased, it hallucinates like crazy, it has an odd tone. Just step away from the old GPT. You've got 4 other options that are the 4.0. The one that I'm going to recommend most highly is Bing Chat, because it's free, it's connected to the internet, it cites its sources, so you can take a look at its sources and make sure it's, they're good sources and that it's telling you the truth. You have to use it in Microsoft Edge. It's going to give you 3 choices. It's going to say, do you want me to be creative, something, and precise, balanced? Don't use balanced. I've heard, in fact, that balanced is 3.5. Yeah. Weird. Yeah, so just, again, don't go there. But I think especially for students, Bing Chat is the way to go because it's free. Now, OpenAI's GPT-4 is quite good. I do pay the $20 a month to use it. And if you're using AI extensively, I would say it's worth it. I like to use both of those because sometimes one does something a little bit better than another. I feel like OpenAI it writes a little more eloquently. Claude, what's great about Claude is that it's easy to access. So like if students feel uncomfortable signing up for like an account with Claude, they just put in an email, and they can put in, like, I hope you all have a junk email and all our students have a junk email. They can put in their junk email, it sends them a code, and they're in and they're going. So for students who feel kind of uncomfortable, or anyone who feels kind of uncomfortable, Claude can be good for that. Claude specifically is designed to be ethical. That's their thing. It can handle large documents. So if you wanted it to summarize like a 20-page journal article and you had it in PDF form, you could upload it and it could do that. Maybe even 40 pages, maybe more. So it has its place, but generally I don't think you're going to find it's as good as Bing or GPT-4. And then Bard has not been that good. So far, I don't think good enough to bother using, but Google claims they've got this new one, Gemini, out any minute. Although when I checked this morning, it was still a little unclear when it was really coming out and what was it already out. And yeah, so we'll see about that. So prompt writing. Let's say right now, literally, I asked you all, write me a lesson plan, by which I mean write me a lesson plan. Don't write you a lesson plan. I need you all to write a lesson plan for me to teach on Wednesday. You can't do that. Like what? But what if I said to you, write a lesson plan for first-year college students in a course on critical issues in education and make it a 75-minute lesson on distinguishing better quality resources from lesser quality resources. Okay, that you could do, right? And the same is true with AI. You've got to give it enough context down to things like, in this case, the grade level of the students and so forth. So this is kind of the key here. Giving it context, giving it specificity. So I recommend when you first start, perhaps using cut and paste prompts. Those are prompts that someone else has written that you can literally copy and paste into the AI, and you change a few things and you go. So if you go to my website, you don't need to go now, probably shouldn't go now, but I've got, I don't know, dozens and dozens and dozens of these that are specifically for educators. And I'm going to show you an example of one in a minute. From there, once you start using some cut and paste prompts, I feel like it only takes about 30 to 60 minutes to learn prompt engineering. There's a few really good videos. I've got some links. So Erica showed me a new one today. I'm going to take a look at that, but it just doesn't take that long. It's fairly straightforward. So here's an example of one from my list of cut and paste prompts. This is a prompt that I wrote for what's called a generative textbook. This is an idea that a normal textbook is the same for everybody, right? They all go to page 1 and it looks the same for everybody. In a generative textbook, the textbook changes according to the reader. So you put in a prompt like this, and it will ask the student questions, tailor it to their interests. I'm just going to be quiet for a minute and let you have a quick look at this. Yeah, so you see how it sort of molds itself to the learner. It's interesting, isn't it? I'm going to come back to this again in a minute. So one of the kind of the great promises of AI is that it can personalize learning. You just kind of looked at that. So let's think for a minute about how we can use it in this way. And before we do that, I'm going to tell you a little story. So years ago, I was in Alby, Worcester, and I was studying a school there called University Park Campus School. Just an amazing school for grades 7 through 12, and just kind of a public school, kind of an inner city, low income public school that was outperforming a lot of, your great private schools in the state. So I was studying it. I went with a few colleagues, and we, spent several days there. And lots of other people did this. It's the school's doing really well, and so a lot of people were visiting and, kind of checking out what they were doing. And when it came time to go, we were hanging out with some of the teachers, and they seemed awfully sad to see us go. And I said, "People come and visit here all the time. You guys seem sad to see us go. I don't get it." And one of them said, "Yeah, people visit here all the time. And virtually all of them, after they've seen what we're doing, say, 'Yes, but.'" They say, "Yes, but. We can't do it at our school because of this. Oh, we couldn't do this something like this at our school because of that." I'm telling you, this school had nothing. Like it had so little, it was running on a shoestring budget. I'm like, yeah. And they said, "And you all have been saying yes and." And so my invitation to you all, as we move into this part where we're kind of talking about actually using AI, I want you to, at least for this brief period of time, move yourself into that yes and stance, just for a little while at least. Just go there with me. Just go there with me. So let's see what happens. So if AI is good at personalization, now look at this same prompt kind of more from that angle. I first showed it to you because I just wanted you to see an example of a cut and paste prompt where you could literally cut it, stick it into AI, change the things that are in boldface, go. But now I want you to think of it in a little deeper way in terms of how it could personalize learning for the student. And I want you to either just take a moment and maybe jot down some ideas, maybe turn and talk to someone. If you're online, maybe go into the chat. How do you feel about this? What are some ways that you would like to see AI personalize the learning in your classroom? How would you fill in these boldface parts? How might you use this? So either write or turn and talk. So here are a few other just sample prompts. These are ones that would be maybe ones to give to students. Again, these are prompts that kind of help personalize learning. For example, a student could ask AI, "Can you give me multiple resources to help me understand blank?" The resources could include videos, websites, simulations, games, or infographics. This can be a great way for students to just go deeper on something and more multimedia. And again, this is one that's going to definitely work best in Bing, because Bing is going to go out and search the internet. I love this one. "Can you break down the concept of blank into manageable chunks and kind of teach me, lead me through each piece?" For someone who's really struggling in a class, like maybe a biology class for non-majors, and they're just really stuck, that can be a lifesaver. And they could do this at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's no embarrassment. Sometimes students get embarrassed, like, "Oh, I couldn't go to our tutoring center." But with AI, I found a number of students who said they started out using AI as a tutor because they felt safer doing it. But then once they had some tutoring from AI, they felt better about getting tutoring from our tutoring center. I'm planning a career in blank. Can you help me see how blank will help prepare me for that? Sometimes people use this, you tell AI that it's an expert in something. You're an expert, fill in the blank. I will ask you questions and you answer me as an expert mentor would. My students and I have been playing around with that a good bit. It's been a lot of fun. And AI, the open AI that costs $20 a month has this new thing where you can have a like an oral conversation with it. And so we just started playing with that next week. And a number of my students said they liked it a lot better. So they were using the same prompt, only they were talking back and forth. And they give you a choice of 5 voices and they're all pretty good. It sounds very close to natural. Yeah, so it turns into what feels like a real conversation with an expert and not so much typing involved. How could you, again, when you think about maybe personalizing AI, how could you help students use AI to study better? So for example, you could ask AI to make a plan for spaced practice. We know that this is extremely key for learning, this idea that you don't cram the night before. Instead, you look at all the different pieces of what you need to learn, and not only do you space them out over time, but you cycle through them and come back, And so you can go to AI and use a prompt that will help do that for you, for the student. It's great for generating pre-questions or pre-quizzes. You may wonder why that's important. Wow, some of the new research on this has been just amazing. In one study, students who took a practice test before learning the material outperformed their peers who studied more traditionally by 49% on a follow-up test. So if you haven't been using pre-questions or pre-quizzes, please do. And I'm telling my own students, your professors might not be doing this yet. It's very new research. You can do it for yourself. Get AI to give you some questions. You can create your own pre-quiz, your own pre-questions. If it's going to be a boost like that, worth it. And then we know, again, that one of the best strategies for studying is self-quizzing. And AI can do that. It can, for example, you could say to it, when I answer correctly, give me a slightly harder question. And when I answer incorrectly, explain where I went wrong. And this is, again, something that AI is really quite good at for fairly standard topics. There's some of you who might be at a point where, you're working with juniors and seniors on some kind of, something really esoteric. It's probably not going to be so good. But for more general courses, entry-level courses, it would be great at this. And again, students who studied a lesson and then reread the same material scored 53% on a follow-up test, while their peers who studied it once and then answered practice questions averaged an 87% score. And yet, you know what our students love to do? Reread. I'm going to reread. Students who reread once and students who reread 3 times do not perform any differently. Pre-questions or self-quizzing, so much better. AI can help. Students can use AI to get tailored feedback. They could, for example, get general feedback. So I've got this paper, I've got this lab, I've got this whatever that I've written. Give me 3 ideas to make it better. Here it is. They paste it in, gives them 3 ideas to make it better. Or they could ask AI for specific feedback. They could, like, for example, if you've given them a rubric, they could give AI that rubric and say, give me feedback on this paper based on this rubric, based on the criteria, and it can. So, and even if they don't have a rubric given by the professor, there's a lot of online rubrics for, fairly general rubrics that could work. So think of these past few things I've just shown you. Let me go back for a minute. And I want you to write down some ideas of like what's coming into your head about how you could use these specific things. So how might you use sample prompts? and teach students to use sample prompts. Think about that for a moment. When would you do this? Which would you use? Why? If any good ideas are coming to you, don't lose them. Write them down. If you wanted to have students use AI to study better, which would you use? When? How would you get students using this? If you wanted to show students how to use AI to get tailored feedback, how would you do that? When would you do it? What projects do you maybe assign that this would be a good fit for? So let's look at student writing. One of the things that AI does particularly well is help people get started on things. That's where students tend to get particularly stuck. Like, if you could just get me started. When I've talked to students, they've said that's what they use it for most, in fact, is like, write me the introductory paragraph. They say they don't usually keep that paragraph, but having the paragraph gets them going, and then they go back and redo the opening paragraph. Yeah. I've used it for this myself. I love it. Or to generate ideas. Just so often, I'm like, you could write about anything. Oh, that just makes students crazy. Again, it's fantastic for generating ideas. It can also free them up if they get stuck in the middle. You know how sometimes when you're writing, things are actually going along swimmingly, and then you just reach a point where they're not. So if you could put in what you got so far and say, what am I missing? What examples or analogies could I add? What might some counter arguments be? Yeah. Or you could use it to polish up at the end. I've used it, probably what I've used it most for. Oh, I love having it generate titles. When we were putting this together, we did that. Unfortunately, it gave us so many, there were like so many that it gave us that we liked, and then it was hard to decide which one we liked best. Yeah. I also often use it, I put in the prompt, revise this piece, making no significant changes other than grammar and punctuation. Or revise this piece to make it more clear and succinct. Or make it more creative, make it more expert. Think for a minute about how you'd use this. While I cough and drink tea. So how could we use AI to enhance teaching? Mostly up to this point, I've given you some ideas for how you could help students use it better. How could we use it? Basically, pretty early on, when my fellow faculty members were coming to me in a panic, I realized that you kind of got three choices. You can adapt pieces you've already, assignments you already have. You could critique it, or you could embrace it. And I'm going to show you examples of each. But first, I'm going to make you look at the slide again, because I really want you to remember that what it comes down to is what people value, what the students value. When students value the learning, that's the most important piece of this. They'll almost always put in the work. So make it valuable. Make it valuable. Make it personal. That also is a great way. So for example, a first-year teaching professor adapted an assignment she already had to make it an interview. So they had to interview a fellow student and then turn that into an article. Well, that would be a little bit tough for AI to do. AI could certainly help, but you wouldn't want AI to make things up about another person in the class, to basically lie about them. So it really got students interested and was a great way to make it more personal. And I think you should also maybe consider a variation on oral exams for classes that aren't too large. This is how I solved one of my bigger problems, was that I was given an asynchronous online course. And in that environment, it's a lot harder to know if students are using AI or not. Anyone who's really good at it and knows how to work it so that it doesn't have that AI feel, could be using it. So I decided that I was going to have oral exam. I was going to do traditional, like Oxford oral exams at the end of the semester. I had, I think, 20 students in that class. It was a 20-minute oral exam. I think the downside of oral exams is that sounds really daunting. So I did not call them oral exams. I let them know up front what the questions were going to be. They were very broad. And then once they had answered kind of the broad question, I would drill down from there. I told them I was, here are the 10 questions that cover kind of everything we looked at in this class. I'm just going to pull 3 at random, and that's how this is going to work. So students knew it was going to be fairly informal, more of a conversation. They knew what to expect. They knew what the questions were. So I feel like I was able to take a lot of what could have been anxiety producing out. And I don't think I've ever been more clear at the end of the semester about exactly what my students knew, because I was able to do that drill down. I could see if someone just had the basic idea or if they really could go deep. And it was actually, other than the time element, I enjoyed it thoroughly. And really, if I'd given them some kind of writing project at the end, it could easily have taken me 20 minutes per paper. And I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I feel like it did what I needed it to do. And I consider it, is all I'm saying. Another way to adapt is I use Prusol.com. I understand you all use more of Hypothesis. They're both social annotation apps, both lovely, where you can upload a text, students highlight and annotate, but the great thing is that they can see one another's annotations. And I feel like if your goal at the moment is to adapt, it's a great way to do it, because it's extremely difficult to use AI to do social annotation. In fact, it would take so long that it would not be worth the effort. It'd be just a lot faster to read and annotate. And my students have said that I've used it long before AI. And my students have always said they just enjoy it so much more than they would enjoy reading a text alone at home. It becomes interactive, it becomes social. But I can look at their annotations and right before class and just know exactly where I need to go. I can see if there was misconceptions. I can see what they were particularly interested in. So I'm a huge fan, and have been for a long time, of social annotation apps. And now with AI, I like them even more. So if you aren't familiar, I recommend taking a look at one or more of these. And you've got some folks over here who, yes, would be happy to help you do that. They're really quite easy to use. Here's an example of Prusol. You can see students have highlighted a lot of different things. This pink one is the one that I was looking at the moment. And you can see the students, what they had to say about it. Yeah, it's really fun. I mean, I think it's more fun too. Another way to adapt is to move more of the foundational information outside of class. And then your class becomes a workshop where students are applying what they learned at home. You're seeing them doing it. You're providing feedback. Something that I'm experimenting with, I'm trying to put together what's called a vertical learning classroom at Georgia College. And this is a room that's mostly whiteboards, like most of the walls are whiteboards. And students are generally working in trios at those whiteboards for most or all of the class period. And that allows me to see what they're doing and give feedback. So that's just been, again, something I would have done anyway, but fantastic in terms of AI. So another thing that a lot of my colleagues have been saying is that they really want to see the students' preliminary work. Like they want to see how a piece evolves over time. And that's kind of how they know students aren't using AI unethically, because they saw the first draft and they saw the second draft. You know, if the third draft looks, really different from draft 1 and 2, that tells them something. Also consider changing the medium. Again, it's not that AI couldn't help with any of these different media, but it just takes a lot more effort. I feel like even if a student generated a script for a podcast, by the time they had generated it and printed it out and then read it to make it a podcast, they probably would have learned quite a bit. So consider changing the medium. You can see I cleverly didn't say what unessays are, so you have to actually click and go see. So I said you could adapt, critique, or embrace. Here's critique. Someone gave her students this. Ask one of the generative AI programs to write a 3-page APA-style literature review on your topic. And then she had them go through and highlight in red anything that was hallucinated, a lie, and then green, good stuff, and then yellow, yeah, correct, but not great. I think a lot of her students used 3.5, but what an interesting assignment. And you can just see from the color, how that turned out. And I think I just picture my own students if they had done this and then we set it all out like this. It's just really an interesting visual. Eric Prochaska, I think, has just a fantastic list of possibilities for critique. This is something that I hope you come back to. Click on his name, you can get even more information, but you can see how he just has a lot of fantastic ideas if critique is what you'd like students to do. And I love how critique requires so much higher order thinking. If you're worried that AI is going to chase away the higher order thinking, I think actually you might see more and better higher order thinking. Or you could embrace. And that's mostly what I've done. When I do it, I call it the Kepke method because I had this colleague, she was a landscape architect professor at UGA. And years and years ago, back when e-portfolios were the thing, the bright new thing, she wrote a grant and got all this equipment to do e-portfolios for architecture. So she had a course called e-portfolios. Students came on the first day and she said, I have no idea how to work any of these computers, but I know what a good portfolio looks like. And by the end of the semester, we're going to have figured this out. And then they just dove in together and spent the whole semester figuring it out. And she said it was the greatest course she ever taught. And so I thought, that's what I'm doing with this new AI thing. I'm going all in. I'm just going to walk in and be like, there's this new AI thing. Let's just all use the heck out of it and show each other what we get and look at what it does well and what it doesn't do well. Let's just play with it, have at it. It's been wonderful. And so through doing that, I came up with 2 hypotheses. Here's my first one. I call it the uncertain future hypothesis. I think that part of the reason students are increasingly disengaged is because they don't think what we are teaching them is adequately preparing them for an uncertain future of rapid change filled with threatening and complex problems. One student told me this almost exactly. He said, sometimes y'all teach us a lot of cutesy stuff. Yeah, that's what he said. And therefore, I think by incorporating AI, we can explicitly help students consider how it might help them navigate such a future. And students who I think have been exposed to it a lot really appreciate it. They're like, oh, I think my professors really understand what's happening right now and what I might need. And then my second thesis is the training wheel thesis. And it looks like this. I think we have it backwards. We believe that through starting with the basics and gradually helping students build, they will develop an interest. But I think students might be more interested if they had AI support at the start, so they could do more right away and see quality examples that they helped generate. And if we did that, my hypothesis is they will gradually stop using the supports as they gain more interest and competence, wanting to insert more of themselves and their ideas. And this is exactly what panned out with my own students. As I said, I had my students use it a lot at first. In this particular course, it's a master's level course where students are preparing to be high school teachers and of all kinds. And so I had students use it for unit planning, lesson planning, assignment design, assessments, all kinds of things. And they quickly realized that there were lots of things they felt they could do better and said so. Like, I used it for this. I think I could do better. And I found that the AI quickly led to higher order thinking, especially critique, analysis, and application of criteria. Because every time they had AI produce something for them, they had to ask, is what it is producing good? And that really required a lot of understanding. They really had to understand the criteria for good. They had to apply the criteria for good. And so all of a sudden, they were really thinking a lot about what constituted good in lesson planning and assessment design and everything. At this point, they do use AI if they need to generate a lot of ideas, but but the students are definitely doing the heavy lifting. And they're creating better lesson plans than ever before. In fact, at the end of that first semester, I always do this thing where I give students 2 hours and they have to, with no help whatsoever, nothing, no device, nothing. They're doing it vertical learning. Everyone's just got a big chunk of whiteboard. Create as much of a unit as you can, 2 hours. This year, they did better than they had ever done before, despite having used AI extensively through the whole semester. Better. Yeah. So some unique and innovative applications. It is great for lesson plans, rubrics, feedback, assignment directions, more clear explanations, analogies, all great. You could use it for visuals that without licensing concerns. Here's some examples of some things I've done. I wanted to give students an overview of 12 issues. Ooh, I've got only a couple minutes left here. And how would I explain those issues to students? I just had AI write it for me. I sometimes use it to write white papers. Like if I just want to have kind of a general overview for students, I've used it for that. Great for discussion questions. But my very favorite, and I hope you'll come into my cut and paste prompts and try some of these: role play, simulation, games, and case studies or scenarios. To me, this is where it gets really fun because I've always wanted to do a lot more of this, but it was just so time consuming and I was having trouble like even thinking how I would get started. Woo, now. So I've used it to like students role play with the AI, where they're playing the nurse and AI is being the patient, if it's a nursing program, or yeah. I've seen people use it where like they're talking to board members. The student is someone talking to the board, AI is playing the board members. I've seen it used to practice negotiation, to practice political types of things. We already use some simulations. For example, when people learn to fly, they use flying simulators. If, I've heard that nurses, start by giving shots to oranges or something. So how could we use AI to create more simulations? I'm excited about that. Creating more games. It would be simple to use it to help you generate password, Jeopardy, memory games. But I think you just go into AI and say, give me 10 very different game ideas to help my students learn X, and just see what it gives you. I mean, you could be having so much fun. You could get the students to create the games. In the past, maybe that was too much to ask. I think with the help of AI, the students could be doing more of that for you. Yes. Did you ever want to have your own case studies designed just for what you wanted to do? Now it's possible. AI can help. So for example, a pharmacy friend helped me with this one, where they created a scenario where a patient had multiple conditions and they had to go through this process. I'm telling you, so many cool possibilities. Just head on into the cut and paste prompts and play with these some. And now, Q&A. I want to toss in one more thing that I just realized at no point I mentioned, and that is how spectacular AI is at taking dictation. Like if you just go into ChatGPT and hit, act like you're putting in a prompt and click the microphone, and then you've got 10 minutes is the longest it could be. And you just start talking, it will give you a transcription you cannot believe. If you've got an accent, it doesn't matter. It puts in all the punctuation for you. If you mumble some, it still seems to get it. It is 10 times better than any other dictation I've ever seen. I've used it where students will practice like a presentation and with that dictation turned on, and then ask AI to give them feedback on what they said. Fantastic for dictation. And its ability to translate into other languages, you can't believe. Google Translate was pretty good, but it translated things into generic Spanish, whereas the AI can translate into Puerto Rican Spanish, or it's a specific dialect, Castilian Spanish, and much more naturally. So if you need to do any kind of translation, oh, so much better. Yes.
Well, what you just raised.
So we're gonna bring you a microphone because we're that with it.
That's very modern.
I know. It's like Oprah. Except there's no car under your seat.
Thank you. Your last suggestion raised for me the question about how well AI transcribes taped interviews. Is that something that AI could be used to assist research?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And in fact, sometimes I want a transcript of a podcast and I'm mad there isn't one. I learned to just turn the podcast on and set my phone next to it, and it beautiful transcriptions of podcasts for me. Ah. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear me now? Yes. First of all, I want to say thank you so much, because I think for me specifically, this filled the gap from knowing what it is and really having tangible examples of how to bring this in the classroom. So I wrote down so many examples. I do have one question regarding one of your slides. You suggested using AI to fine tune a piece. And again, this may be obvious to others, but how do you actually plug in the piece into it, and it you do the instructions first, the instructions last? I'm just not familiar with that.
Usually I say, here's what I want you to do, AI. And then I say, here's the piece. And I cut and paste it in. Some of them you can, like in Claude, you can upload the piece. But for shorter things, I just cut and paste it in. Yeah. Yeah, it's remarkably easy.
Hi, thanks so much. I think there are so many great ideas here. One thing, especially this idea of a generative textbook, which I think is great, as you said, for kind of some basic subjects, but especially in engineering and these applied subjects that might be in research, which is very contemporary. I've found that there might even just be small lies that show up, and especially in the context of being written in really convincing ways, it can be really hard for non-experts to figure out when that's wrong, and especially in math and science, where these LLMs are not capable of doing math. They're capable of pretending to do math, but not actually math. The idea of creating, practice questions, practice answers, giving information in a way that is misleading potentially to students using it as a tutor is something I worry about, and would love to hear your thoughts about that from a science and math perspective, especially since the internet is now contaminated with AI. And so our ability to get factual stuff is becoming less good. Even in the past year that I've been able to observe, because the internet is now full of images and language that's just factually incorrect, more so than ever before.
A lot of times what I've done, again, I feel like it's only generative textbooks are only going to work well for kind of intro level. And often I will tell Bing Chat, look at this website and this website. I'll add that into the prompt. And then it's mostly drawing from websites that I've chosen for students to look at. So that's helped. I think as we move into the future where AI is better quality and there's more of these specialized AIs, with a specialized AI where it's literally drawing from hundreds of articles that maybe you put in, then I think you'd feel much more comfortable. Yeah. So I think right now, good for introductory subjects. In the future, I think it could be amazing. Yeah. I think someone up here's got a question, and we've got someone over here.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, it's not on. Okay. On now?
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm curious about when you're working with your students, if you have conversations about the kind of concerns and ethics around data privacy and chat, whether it's GPT or other, AI, mainly because as you were talking about, having students either put in original kind of, writing or research, there is a chance, most likely high chance that is going to be contributed to the large language model that then is being used to generate additional AI and so forth. So I'm just curious about how you pose those questions or conversations with your students to get them to think and make sure that they're aware of what they're doing.
Yeah, so when I do that initial day of like introducing them to it through my protocol, that's one of the things we look at. I know this is true at Georgia College, but it's also true here that when they're using Bing Chat, your IT people have put something in place that provides more privacy. In fact, you'll see a little message at the top of Bing Chat now that says something to that end. And so that's another good reason to ask students to use Bing and not another one, is because you've got a lot more privacy. It's built in. Yeah, so love that. So, yeah.
I just wanted to comment on the training wheels approach you shared. I find that very, very exciting and completely transform that solitude of writing a paper and starting from the basics to something entrepreneurial, maybe group, like very organic, like a startup, just that energy of let's build this and oh no, let's fix it. I just think that would be so high energy and transformative and so much more human.
I'm telling you, for the past 20 years, every time when I've taught students to write just a simple lesson plan, the first one they write, oh my gosh, took forever. And year after year, I thought, how could it take you all this long? Slog. Slog was the only word for it. Oh, it was a slog. And then the next one was just slightly less of a slog. And this year, for the first time, the very first one they wrote looked pretty great, because they were using AI extensively for it. And they were so proud, like, oh, look what I made. And it really transformed the psychologically how they felt about learning to write lesson plans from slog to excitement. So we got right there.
I'm going to
here, here.
interject from online just to bring them into the space
sorry.
too. We had a question from someone who teaches introductory physics about different audiences. And I know you personally have been working in the School of Education, but you've also worked with different faculty. Do you find that students approach this differently depending on their background? So like graduate students learning teaching might approach this differently than first-year engineers or physicists.
Definitely. And interestingly, the students who have been most upset, like anti-AI, have been art students. Very, very difficult to convince. I have a friend who's really into AI. In fact, she's the person who got me interested. She's an art historian. And she said it's been very hard because she was ready to go to embrace and go all in, and was having a big struggle with that with her art students. But in the sciences, they've been using AI for a variety of uses for years and years. And so they usually take to it like fish, and, everything in between. Yeah, it has been very interesting to see that though. And since I teach all those, I've got people who are future physics teachers and future English teachers. It's been interesting to see.
Thanks. Hi, I work in our accessibility office, and I was wondering if you could just speak more to ways that AI could be helpful or supportive for students. There you go.
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Like I said, it's fantastic for dictation for students who maybe have issues with handwriting or typing. Great for simplifying or explaining difficult passages or concepts. Again, the ability to translate into their dominant language for students for whom English isn't their first language. Vision issues, it's fantastic at describing images, even in great detail. I love that. I've had a number of students who need help organizing ideas, and so they've been using AI for that. I've had a lot of success kind of working one-on-one with students, and trying to kind of get at, all right, so what would be really helpful to you? And then do I think AI could do that? And that's been just a lot of fun having those kind of conversations. Yeah, but so far I've been really pleased with how it does. We have this program at Georgia College where students with severe mental issues can still come to college. They're not getting a degree. They're just getting to spend time with students who are similar age in dorms, and they go to the classes, and just a chance to feel just included in the college experience. And I've seen them doing some really remarkable things with this, because we had one student who, in answering questions in class, it was just incredible what he was saying and coming up with, but he has no ability to write or type at all. And so he dictated a story, and then we were just able to print it out, and he was just beaming that this was totally his. Yeah, incredible.
Hi. First of all, I really enjoyed your talks. Thank you so much. I guess I had a question more about the bias of you as an educator. So I feel like the training model that you put at the end is very counter how most of us have been trained.
Totally.
So how have you overcome, especially that fear you spoke of first using AI, overcoming your own biases to really embrace and integrate these tools into your classroom effectively?
The idea for the vertical classroom comes from Peter, not sure how to pronounce his last name. I'm going to go with Liliendahl. And how Leodahl. And he has this form of research where basically he tries out stuff, sees if it works well. If it's increasing student engagement and learning, then he tries to figure out why.